PlayStation has a lot of games, really good ones, highly praised and beloved, and the PlayStation 4 generation was one of the best in that regard. God of War, Uncharted 4, The Last of Us Remastered, The Last of Us Part 2, Bloodborne, the list just keeps going. And among all of those, near the end of the generation, Ghost of Tsushima was released. It's actually kind of crazy to think that this game is already 5 years old. It's by no means a perfect game, but it's a very solid one, featuring one of the most beautiful worlds I've ever seen in any game, with a completely surreal kind of beauty, brutal and fluid combat that feel absolutely perfect for that game, a simple yet well executed story with surprising emotional weight, and most importantly, a charismatic main character who truly wins us over and makes us care about his journey. With the very recent release of Ghost of Yotei and its extremely well received launch, critically, publicly and commercially, I decided to revisit a game that managed to become legendary in such a short time, without even having a sequel, at least until now. A game so good that many people still believed it deserved the 2020 Game of the Year award, which honestly I disagree with. I think The Last of Us Part 2's victory was well deserved, but still it's beautiful to see how strong of a contender Ghost of Tsushima was, and how the game is actually even better than I remember. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of Ghost of Tsushima? Maybe the combat, maybe the story, the characters perhaps, but for me, the world is the very first thing I see. I mean, come on, it's an island of Japan during the samurai era. It's impossible for it not to be beautiful. It's a setting that, especially nowadays, might be starting to feel a bit oversaturated with how much media loves to explore Japan and the samurais, but what Ghost of Tsushima managed to do with the island of Tsushima is something magical. Everywhere you look feels like a work of art. It's as if the entire world was a literal painting, with every corner detailed with unique colors you won't find anywhere else. There are golden forests so beautiful it's surreal, trees with white leaves, pink leaves, normal green forests that almost feel out of place in this game. Areas covered in colorful flowers that bring such life to the map that whenever you reach one of those places, it feels like you're taking a deep breath and just appreciating the beauty in front of you. It's seriously a strong contender for one of the most beautiful maps I've ever seen. The island itself is divided into 3 parts, each corresponding to one of the game's acts. The map is quite large, not Assassin's Creed Odyssey large, but it's still big, with an awesome sense of scale. You can stand on top of a mountain where you find those shrines, look out across the map, and you know that you can actually go there. Everything you see is explorable, or at least the vast majority of it. It's such a vibrant map with an incredible variety of environments: swamps, towns, snow, forests, mountains, and zones that are hypnotically beautiful. It's genuinely therapeutic, and all of that carries over to the DLC as well. Iki Island is simply one of the most stunning places I've ever seen in any game. Everything I've said so far is from a visual perspective, because when it comes to the exploration and activities, the map isn't one of the best. Now, hear me out, it's not one of the worst either, but it does follow that repetitive formula of various side missions that are mostly there just to fill up time. You know the type: kill some enemies, fetch an item, protect someone from enemies. There are many little side missions that just don't feel natural. Take The Witcher 3 for example. I know it's a very different case. The Witcher 3 is a very special game, but even the most insignificant side quest in that game still feels meaningful and relevant. It makes you care about the consequences and the reason you're doing it. Ghost of Tsushima, on the other hand, has many little side quests that are just there. And sometimes it even feels a lot like the newer Assassin's Creed games, full of enemy camps that, despite the epic combat, eventually becomes tedious. But there it is. A lot of what I just mentioned are those smaller side quests, which, yes, are very important to bring life to an open world, and Ghost of Tsushima doesn't do them that well. Like I said before, they're quite repetitive, boring even. There comes a point in the game where you just lose all motivation to do them. But there's another side to the coin when it comes to side missions. The quests of your allies are missions of your companions, and they manage to tell more complex stories with emotional arcs that are much easier to connect with. They're missions you want to see through to the end because they're genuinely interesting, not just because you want the reward, but because the story itself is intriguing and you want to know how it ends. They deliver interesting characters, deeper stories, and often ones just as emotional as the main story. Maybe not quite to that level, but close. For me though, the absolute peak of the game lies in the mythic tales. These legendary stories of ancient warriors that by the end reward you with legendary armor, new moves, or special weapons. It's incredibly epic. There's this powerful sense of exploration and adventure as you hear these ancient tales, chase down the truth behind them, and finally end up in an epic duel just to have an awesome reward. It's honestly so cool. Probably my favorite part of the entire game. It's all completely optional content, but it's so worth doing because it elevates the overall experience of the game by 1000%. And it's not just these side missions, even the smaller activities scattered around the map are great and have worthwhile rewards. The fox dance, the hot springs, bamboo strikes, every little thing you can find on the map ends up being both useful and fun to do, though a bit quite repetitive. Even though I didn't do all of them, the ones I did were really enjoyable. Sure, there are moments where doing certain tasks can get tiring, but for the most part, it's absolutely worth it. And honestly, it's very hard not to appreciate exploring this map and doing all these activities when you've got those breathtaking views in the background. And when you talk about Ghost of Tsushima, one of the biggest and most defining highlights of the game is the gameplay. But it's important to split that into two parts: the combat and everything that revolves around it, and then everything outside the combat. I've always heard a lot of people compare this game to Assassin's Creed, saying things like, Ghost of Tsushima is everything Assassin's Creed dreams of being. And honestly, as someone who has played a few Assassin's Creed games, not all, but enough, I can totally see where those comments come from. The game clearly takes some inspiration from some of those ideas, the simple parkour system, some of the stealth mechanics, but before we get into everything combat related, let's talk first about the other mechanics. We spend a lot of time exploring this game, as I mentioned before, but Ghost of Tsushima has one of the best navigation systems I've ever seen. Most games rely on a typical minimap, which, for the record, I'm actually a big fan of. I love a good, well-designed minimap, but Ghost of Tsushima likes to do things differently, using the wind to guide you to your destination. It's something I haven't seen in any other game, and from what I know, Ghost of Yotei continues that tradition, which I'm really happy about. It's such a simple idea, but it works so well. Not only does it have an in-lore explanation, Jin Sakai's father being the wind that guides him, but it also allows you to better appreciate the scenery. When you call upon the wind, it sweeps through the vegetation beautifully, creating this incredibly immersive moment, something we all love. As for the parkour of the game, it's mostly used for side activities like reaching shrines, collecting sword kits. Basically, during exploration is where you get to use it more often. It's probably the least refined part of the entire gameplay. It doesn't always respond well to the controls, it feels both too automatic and too manual at the same time, kind of clunky and sometimes a bit out of place compared to the sheer quality of the combat, which is simply the best sword combat I've ever played. Maybe I'm biased because I love Ghost of Tsushima's cinematic style, but every duel is just so epic. Entering an enemy camp, calling them out to fight, and taking everyone down with that fluid, cinematic gameplay, it's so satisfying. The different stances, each with unique animations and designed for specific enemy types, are a really nice touch. I love having to think strategically about which stance to use, but I also love turning my brain off and just unleashing all the mythic attacks I've learned from the legendary tales scattered across the world. Are they unrealistic? Yes. Are they awesome? Absolutely. But not as awesome as the Ghost sense that classic L3 plus R3 PlayStation games love to use. And once again, it's epic. Honestly, everything in this game feels epic if you really think about it. And I actually think that this was the game that made me start to enjoy stealth more in video games. Before playing this, stealth sections used to be a bit boring and kind of annoying to me, but Ghost of Tsushima actually changed that. Maybe because I grew up too, but maybe it's also because it's tied so closely to the story, with Jin himself beginning to adopt different techniques, one of them being stealth, but it's just so satisfying. The animations, the bow, all the small tools Jin has at his disposal, everything feels amazing to use. The combat overall is far better than I remember when I first played it. It's not perfect, I wish it had a bit more depth, but it's excellent at what it sets out to do, and it leaves room for improvement, which seems to be exactly what Ghost of Yotei has done, or so I've heard. I haven't played it yet, but I plan to. So the combat in Ghost of Tsushima, honestly, the gameplay as a whole is far better than I remember. Not just because it's great on its own, but because it evolves alongside the story, and more importantly, it evolves alongside Jin, showing his transformation from a noble samurai into the ghost. And the story of Ghost of Tsushima has never really been praised for being something radically different or completely innovative compared to other games, because at the end of the day, it isn't. It's a story with a simple premise: save the island of Tsushima, but what truly makes it memorable is how it's told and how everything unfolds. Right from the start, the game delivers one of the best openings I've ever seen. It immediately gives us all the necessary context to start caring about the characters. The way it shows that even with all the samurai clans of Tsushima united, they're still completely powerless against the Mongol Empire. It's portrayed in a way that makes the characters themselves feel hopeless. It's a visually stunning, iconic opening. That first moment on horseback cutting through enemies, it's amazing, but more importantly, it perfectly serves as the hook that makes you want to know more about the story. This opening makes you want to know more about Jin Sakai, and that's exactly what the game gives us. One of the coolest and most well-written character arcs I've seen in recent years. Jin starts the game as the typical samurai, honorable, disciplined, following the teachings of his father and uncle. Protect your people without resorting to dishonorable methods, the way of thieves and assassins. That theme of honor is extremely strong throughout the whole game, but what's fascinating is how as Jin begins to witness the cruelty and mercilessness of the Mongol Empire toward his people and even with those closest to him, he slowly starts breaking away from those traditions, or perhaps even more accurately, discovering his true self. The people fighting alongside him don't care about the samurai code either. All that matters to them is saving and freeing Tsushima. But that's not how Jin's uncle sees it, and that's what makes their arc together so emotional. In the first half of the game, Jin tells himself that everything he's doing, even breaking the code, is to save his uncle, and then save Tsushima the samurai way. But in the second half of the game, he begins to accept his true purpose, saving as many lives as possible, becoming the ghost.
This is not our way. Your way can't save our people. The Shogun will demand a head. But it does not have to be yours. I know she drove you to this. Uncle, renounce the ghost. You must blame her for this outrage. Tell them you are Jin Shimura, loyal servant to the Shogun. My heir. My son. I am not your son. I am the ghost.
Jin no longer cares about morals or codes drilled into him as a child, because at the end of the day, those mean nothing if he can save another life by doing things differently. This contrasts Jin drifting further from the traditional samurai path and embracing his role as the ghost is portrayed beautifully. For Jin, honor becomes nothing. For his uncle, it's everything. That's why their final confrontation is so powerful and memorable. It's the embodiment of the duality between a samurai bound by tradition and a warrior who did everything to protect his people.
He ordered you to kill me. The ghost was an outlaw. He taught our people to defy their leaders. To defend themselves. With poison. A gift you gave to our enemy. I had to stop you from throwing away our people's lives. You have no honor. And you are a slave to it.
Beyond being perhaps the most beautiful duel in the entire game and one of the hardest, it carries all the emotional weight of the story. The fight against Khotun Khan feels almost insignificant compared to this. The emotional tension leading up to that battle was genuinely shocking, at least for me it was. I went into this game expecting a good story, after all it's from PlayStation Studios, but I didn't expect something this emotionally rich or a character arc this well crafted. And all of it culminates in those final minutes, the fight, the dialogue, and of course the most difficult thing in the entire game, choosing whether to kill or let Lord Shimura live. For me, that's an easy choice. The samurai code and everything Jin's uncle stands for demands that Jin kills him. Dying by his nephew's blade would be the ultimate honor, proving that his teachings lived on. But to me, this is the final step in Jin's evolution, the moment that truly defines the ghost. He would never kill his uncle for something as insignificant as honor. That belongs to the Jin of the past. At this point, what matters are are the lives he can save. And that's why I think the best choice is to let Lord Chimera live. It's a surprisingly powerful story that builds phenomenal characters and leaves you wanting more of Jin Sakai. Sadly, we might not get that, like 99% chance we don't get more Jin Sakai, but he's become an iconic PlayStation character in an incredibly short time. It's not a perfect story, it has its highs and lows, but it's consistent, emotional, and very well executed. And for that, it absolutely deserves to be called excellent. Which is something I'm a bit afraid when it comes to Ghost of Yotei. As I said, I haven't played it yet, but from some of the talk I've seen around, the story isn't anything special. Technically, the game is absurdly impressive. The gameplay took the fantastic foundation of Ghost of Tsushima and managed to expand it, making it even better, smoother, more beautiful, more complex, and with something I really wanted in Ghost of Tsushima, more depth. The amount of new weapons and what you can do with them is really cool, the new abilities too, and more importantly, something that I mentioned Ghost of Tsushima was somewhat weak in, the random encounters in the world, those small side quests you can stumble upon, they're much better developed this time around, with more attention to what truly matters. There are even mentions and ties to the main story, those little side things that are easy to get lost doing, making you forget the main plot, without feeling like you're doing chores. The world itself is even more beautiful, somehow more diverse and detailed. Mount Yotei is honestly one of the most stunning things I've ever seen in any game. The game as a whole has more of those tiny, meticulous details that only the most observant players will notice. It's a game that technically is superior to Ghost of Tsushima, and incredibly in 2025, it's a game that runs well with no bugs, no performance issues. It's crazy that this needs to be praised nowadays, but when it's done, it deserves it. But all of that, without a story with soul, can't create a memorable game. I won't say much, I don't know the full story, but the only thing I hope is that it has a good narrative to match the rest of the game, which is simply phenomenal. And that's exactly what Ghost of Tsushima managed to achieve. Incredible combat full of visually stunning techniques, an extraordinarily beautiful map, a somewhat of a repetitive world, but with a great story and an even better protagonist. For me, the story and Jin's development are probably the most crucial aspects that make Ghost of Tsushima such a special game. Of course, combined with everything else, it creates an incredible overall experience. I never thought, and I still don't think, that Ghost of Tsushima is one of the best games ever. It's actually quite far from that, but it's a game that perfectly delivers what it sets out to do. It puts us in the shoes of one of the deadliest samurai on the island of Tsushima, and we witness his evolution into something more, a symbol. It honestly makes me sad that there won't be a sequel to Jin Sakai's story, even though I do believe there were still directions the narrative could go even after the DLC, but I also think it's beautiful, even poetic in a way, for a character to end with just one story, to have his journey conclude in a way that feels worthy of him. That's what Ghost of Tsushima is, a story that ends right there. Each sequence has nothing to do with the previous one, it simply builds upon its foundation and follows a new story. Kind of cool actually that PlayStation has its own franchise where it can make games set in different places but with the same kind of mechanics. The sort of Assassin's Creed but without all the interconnected stories. I already loved Ghost of Tsushima, but nowadays I think it's even better than I remembered. I don't know if it is just me who feels this way, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you think Ghost of Tsushima is an even better game than you remember, or does it still just feel like a good game to you, or even bad? That's more of a matter of opinion, of course. I just felt the urge to talk about this game that I loved experiencing, all because of the hype surrounding Ghost of Yotei. It made me want to revisit this beautiful painting of a game. Well, share your thoughts in the comments, leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe, you already know the drill, and as always, thank you so much for watching.